Now to Stars and Gripes, and up first, ex-DNC Chair Jamie Harrison on Gavin Newsom's podcast, and he reveals that the Democratic Party is stuck listening to the same old left-wing voices over and over again, and it is killing them.
People in D.C. are in the bubble, right? And all they're doing is reading Politico and seeing what MSNBC and CNN is talking about. But I'm actually like in the union halls or in the churches or in the barbershops and talking with real people. And you're ringing the bells like, folks, I am telling you, this is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm seeing from folks on the ground. And I think what we have to do as a party is get less in the polling stuff. Well, the polling says blah, 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 blah. Actually go out and talk to folks, right? Because pollsters can ask questions in different ways and get whatever they want to get to support the theory that they already have, right? But there is nothing like getting the real, raw sense of where folks are.
Well, joining me to discuss is President of the Center of American Experiment, John Hinderaker. John, thank you, as always, for coming on the show. This is really interesting, this admission that we're getting from somebody that did, at one point, run the DNC, saying that, well, maybe we've been too distracted to polls and we live in a bubble. And that's probably something that you and I could have told them for free without any of that consulting cash.
Jack, that's exactly right. You know, the Democrats are fretting about what's wrong with our brand. Well, I can tell you what's wrong with their brand. Their policies are unpopular. What do the Democrats stand for? They stand for open borders, for uncontrolled spending and high taxes. They're pro-crime. They're obsessed with DEI and trans ideology, and they're weak on foreign policy. All of those positions are very unpopular. And so they wring their hands and they fret about what's the problem. The problem is they are backing the wrong policies.
I completely agree. The suggestion that they're going to create a YouTube channel and then that will be the thing that will win over the kids, I think is quite absurd.
No, you're exactly right. You know, people are never as dumb as the political consultants want to think they are. You know, if you want to improve your standing with the public, you really have to take a hard look at what it is that you stand for, and are you aligned with the policy priorities that the voters have?
Yeah, well said. Now to double standards in the media, which cheered on the political persecution of Donald Trump for years. Well, now that the FBI is raiding the home of former National Security Advisor John Bolton, the suspect is the victim, and somehow it's all Trump's fault.
So he sees this as an opportunity to, again, portray himself as the victim. This is classic Donald Trump. You know, he spent most of his presidency portraying himself as a victim of the Russia investigation, certainly his impeachments. And now he's portraying himself as a victim of a runaway and politicized Department of Justice.
In a moment, we'll get to the stunning developments coming into the weekend, with FBI agents swarming around the home and office of former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton. But first, the context. This didn't happen in a vacuum. John Bolton is on a long list of Trump critics who are now facing the wrath of President Trump and his Justice Department.
John, what about context when it was Donald Trump who was being persecuted by a deranged Biden administration, which had to go through and pardon every single member of his family? What about the nuance then?
Yeah, those clips give you exactly the right contrast. The same reporters that cheered on the raid on Donald Trump's home and searching through his wife's underwear drawer are appalled that now a search warrant has been executed at John Bolton's home. And of course, the media narrative is that this is just Trump's revenge, but there is more to it than that. There was a report yesterday in the New York Times indicating that American intelligence agencies intercepted communications by a hostile foreign intelligence agency, either China, Russia, or Iran in all probability. And that foreign intelligence agency, they were saying that they intercepted insecure email communications by John Bolton and described the contents of those communications reportedly to family members, and it's classified information. And so this is very much like the Hillary Clinton email scandal, using insecure personal communication methods to transmit classified information. And so in all likelihood, the purpose of this raid, which was signed off on by 2 federal judges, was to see if there's information that would show that these emails that the Foreign Intelligence Service was talking about are genuine. So there's every reason to think that this is a very legitimate investigation.
Yeah, you can't leak state secrets. And they did that to Trump as well. It's the same thing that they tried to get him on as well. So the hypocrisy is crazy. But look, moving on, because we all know that CNN is angry about the National Guard heading to DC, but it got awkward when an interview with a resident backfired live on air. The journalist was trying to push her opinion that crime had dropped, and let's see how that went.
First reaction was that this is a good thing. I think that the governor as well as the mayor should be on board with it just so we can get a bit more of security in Chicago the way that we need.
The crime has dropped since 2024. Do you feel like the city feels safer?
No, not at all.
Yeah, so John, the reporter is trying to put words in her mouth that, well, it's not needed because there's no more crime anymore, but it's not quite the answer that she was hoping for.
You know, I love to see regular people interviewed on crime. You know, in Washington, D.C., Chuck Schumer was on television. He's the Senate minority leader, and he said, I feel safe in Washington everywhere I go. Well, yeah, he's surrounded by armed guards everywhere he goes. Of course he feels safe. Talk to an ordinary resident of Washington or Chicago or many other American cities who live in fear of being victimized by crime. And they'll tell you the same story. They're very concerned about crime. And certainly in Washington, D.C., most people are very happy that President Trump has stepped in and assisted with law enforcement in that city.
Yeah, who would have thought people don't want to be mugged on the streets? It's very controversial stuff. Anyway, staying on the so-called DC takeover, you were told that Trump was trying to seize power. It was some of the most inflammatory and blatantly false reporting that I have ever seen. And now that crime is plummeting off the back of the extra police presence, and you can see that we just heard from residents who seem to realise that they were being lied to, watch how the mayor and the media flip.
The mayor says she was appreciative of this federal surge and that she says that it has actually driven down crime and that violent crime is down 45% and overall crime is now down 15%.
I'm not going to talk about the details of that conversation. You have seen what I have laid out in terms of our concerns, and you have seen what I have laid out in terms of the benefits, and that is the huge number of federal law enforcement, not National Guard, federal law enforcement that have enhanced NPD's deployment capacity.
Yeah, John, it's the same sort of thing. The media went out way too hard. Democrats went out way too hard, suggesting that this was horrible, that it was some kind of coup, really irresponsible reporting. Turns out that crime was a problem, and now the rates are plummeting. What did you make of the mayor's flip in this situation?
Well, you know, she's accountable to her constituents, and she lives in D.C. She understands that people don't like to be victimized by criminals, and you got to be happy about the fact that crime is down significantly. Carjackings are down by 87%. I want to make this point, though, Jack. You talk about misleading reporting, all this talk about Trump taking over, seizing power, and so on. The District of Columbia is unique. It is not part of any state. It is a federal territory. It is administered by Congress and the president. And this takeover of the DC police by President Trump is specifically provided for in federal law. The idea that this is some kind of illegitimate seizure of power, you know, is completely fictitious. And it's just false reporting. And I think everybody should be happy to see crime in our nation's capital really on the decline.
John, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your insights.